Published, 1:50 Eastern Standard Time, the 8th of December 2018. Updated, 1:50 Eastern Standard Time, the 8th of December 2018. China-US relations remain tense despite a trade war truce struck between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. China's trade surplus with the United States ballooned to a record $35.6 billion in November, official data showed Saturday, as exports across the Pacific remained strong despite a raft of U.S. tariffs while imports shrank. Relations between the world's top two economies continue to be tense despite a trade war truce struck between U.S. President Donald Trump and his counterpart President Xi Jinping last week. Trump and figures in his administration have said China would immediately start buying U.S. goods in bulk, but Beijing has refrained from confirming those claims. The increasingly lopsided trade in goods between the two nations threatens to further derail prospects for a trade deal during a 90-day negotiation period. The ballooning trade deficit with China is a particularly sore point for Trump, who campaigned on turning around the situation. China's exports to the U.S. rose 9.8% for November on-year, while imports for the month fell 25% on-year, the data from China's Customs Administration showed. Despite the trade war truce, unease over the Trump-Xi agreement has dented stocks. American farmers have been hit particularly hard by the trade tensions. Trump tweeted this week that China would begin buying products from U.S. farmers immediately. Usually Chinese buyers have snapped up American soybeans in the final months of the year as the harvest hits the market and beans from competitor Brazil dry up. But this year, Chinese buyers have passed on U.S. soybeans, which face a 25% border tax upon import, part of the $50 billion in U.S. goods Beijing hit with higher duties this summer in retaliation for U.S. tariffs. China's soybean imports fell 38% on-year, to 5.4 million tons for the month, the data showed. The trade surplus with the U.S. expanded to $293.5 billion for January to November, up from $251.3 billion during the same period last year. Global trade, China's overall trade, what it buys and sells with all countries, including the U.S., logged a $44.7 billion surplus in November, up from $35 billion the previous month, the data showed. The ballooning trade deficit with China is a particularly sore point for Donald Trump, who campaigned on turning around the situation, but growth of exports and imports slowed from October, with exports rising 5.4% for November on-year, short of the 9.4% forecast by Bloomberg News, and imports rising 3.0% on-year, also below the forecast. The sagging export and import growth is another bad sign for China's economy, which grew at its slowest pace for 9 years in the third quarter, expanding 6.5% on-year for July to September. While exports to the U.S. have held up so far this autumn, the row has sapped confidence. The Shanghai Composite Stock Index has fallen by about 1/4 from its January high, while the yuan has slipped about 9% against the dollar. Trade truce. The trade tensions with Washington come at a tough time for Beijing, which is battling to tackle a mountain of debt as credit tightens and infrastructure investment falls. Trump agreed to hold off plans to raise tariffs on another $200 billion in Chinese imports as part of the trade truce last week, as part of the trade war truce. Trump agreed to hold off on plans to raise tariffs on $200 billion in Chinese imports to 25% beginning January 1, leaving them at the current 10% rate. But unease over the agreement has dented stocks this week, with major U.S. indices falling more than 2% to close the market's worst week since March, and one that left both the Dow and the S. China also reacted furiously after a top executive and daughter of the founder of Chinese telecom giant Huawei was arrested in Canada this week following a U.S. extradition request. In addition to buying U.S. goods immediately, Trump claimed this week that China would roll back tariffs of 40% on U.S.-made cars, but China's Commerce Ministry declined to confirm this move when asked about it Thursday. Still, Beijing remains outwardly optimistic on prospects for a trade deal. "We are fully confident that we can reach an agreement in the coming 90 days, Commerce Ministry spokesman Gao Feng said Thursday. Trump tweeted out the quote, adding, "I agree, sorry we are not currently accepting comments on this article."